Purdue starts out Feast Week on Thursday in Baha Mar. Find out their path to their fifth consecutive multi-team event victory.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host today. I am Nick Arvin. I'm the host here at Locked On Boilermakers. I also write about the Boilers for 24/7 Sports. And we're going to have a fun episode today as we preview Baha Mar in Purdue. They are starting out Feast Week. It's not actually Feast Week as it's not starting on Thanksgiving week, but you know, that's what we're going to call it because this Thursday they play against Memphis. I'm sure we'll talk about them today. We're going to talk about Purdue kind of dominating these multi-team events. They've won 4 consecutive Feast Weeks. We'll talk about who's in the field, including a former Boilermaker in Myles Colvin. We played Memphis and Texas Tech. We'll talk about all of those teams, and then we'll end off the show. Make sure you stick around because I'm giving my predictions. We'll see. Maybe do the Boilermakers win Baha Mar? We'll have to talk about that. Today's episode is brought to you by our partners at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So let's go ahead and jump right into things today. And the first thing that I want to bring up when we talk about this Baha Mar tournament, obviously this is Purdue's first trip to Baha Mar. They have played in Maui. We'll talk about that one in terms of their dominance, winning Maui a couple years back. But this is their first trip to the Baha Mar, and it's going to be a fun one. Texas Tech is in the field with JT Toppin. That's going to be a team you don't want to see. But Purdue's first round matchup is Memphis. A lot of athletic guys on Memphis this year that can make you pay. Also, Wake Forest is in there with Myles Colvin, who he's really played good at Wake Forest so far. So it may be fun to see that guy. In Baha Mar, you're going to play 2 games no matter what. If you win the first one, well, you play the winner on the other side. 4 teams. If you lose, well, then you play in the consolidation. Pretty standard 4-team format for one of these MTEs. And like I said, it's the start of Feast Week. And anything can really happen in one of these short tournaments, one of these short events, especially in Baha Mar, where it's played inside of like a convention center, one of these small arenas. Not Mackey, certainly not Mackey, what the Boilermakers are used to. And so people might think that, hey, this may give Purdue trouble. Hey, maybe being out of their environment may give them trouble, but I'm not under that impression. I don't think that Purdue will struggle at all because they proved that they can win outside of Mackey against Alabama, against a really good team this past week. And history has proven that Purdue has been very successful in these Feast Week MTEs. And if you go back 4 years, they've won 4 consecutive MTE events. And it stems back 4 years to 2021. They were in the Hall of Fame Tip-Off Classic. They beat North Carolina and then eventually beat Villanova to win that one. If you go to 2022, Zach Edey in the Phil Knight Legacy event, they beat West Virginia round 1, beat Gonzaga, and then they beat Duke by 19. That was a fun one to win the championship in that event. If you go back to Maui a couple of years back, I'm sure everyone remembers that one, beating Gonzaga, beating Tennessee in that crazy championship game where Zach Edey was named the player of the tournament in Maui. And then last year, the Rady Children's Invitational, we beat NC State round 1 and then game winner against Ole Miss to win that one 80-78. Just because these events are unpredictable, just because these events aren't typically what you're going to see, doesn't mean that Purdue is necessarily going to struggle in these ones. We've seen that Matt Painter has certainly taken these events serious, and he schedules them because he takes them serious. Painter views these MTEs as an example, as an opportunity to really get better, to play against good competition early on in the season. And back-to-back, you're going to have to face off playing in the same weekend come tournament time. So the opportunity to do that, play on Thursday against Memphis, and then hopefully play on Friday in that championship game. That is the goal. And for Purdue, for Matt Painter, it's a great opportunity to get better. in the early season in November. It's one of the earliest events that I've ever seen in terms of this being still considered quote unquote feast week, but it's certainly going to be a fun one. And it's going to be one that I think that Purdue is going to have a decent amount of success in. And you're always going to have success when you have a point guard like Braden Smith. I think that Braden Smith is really going to be a factor in this, because when you talk about these tournaments where maybe these teams aren't the most comfortable, they're not in their natural element, you need a guy that is comfortable when things are uncomfortable. And I think for Purdue this year, especially on the road, especially on neutral sites like this, the most important factor for you is Braden Smith. And he's been that guy for several years now, but even this year, I think we see a different evolution of him, and especially against Alabama, where he was really able to control the pace in that game. He was able to control when Alabama got the ball. He was practically walking the ball up the court a lot of the times to prevent an Alabama offense, as electric as they are, from getting the ball and having more possessions. And when you're as efficient as this Purdue team is this year, you're going to find a lot of success. And I think in Baha Mar, that success that Purdue has found, it's certainly going to continue, especially against Memphis, where Memphis, they're a pretty good scoring team under Penny Hardaway. Hardaway has really tried to build that program back up into what it used to be back in the day. We know Derrick Rose, Calipari, there are so many great Memphis teams. Like I said earlier in the show, we'll talk about it here in this next segment when we go over the field, but this Memphis team is going to be a team on Thursday that you can't take lightly. And you certainly have an advantage for Purdue when you have a point guard that can keep his composure the way that he does. In Braden Smith. And for Trey Kaufman-Renn, I think that, of course, we talk about these big three guys, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR, Braden Smith. They're going to be big all year long for Purdue. But I think that these guys are going to prove to be an advantage, especially in these opportunities in these multi-team events where Trey Kaufman-Renn, he has the opportunity to bang up against some of the best power forwards, some of the best bigs in the nation. There's an opportunity for you to play against JT Toppin out of Texas Tech, who is largely seen as one of the best power forwards in the nation. You have a lot of opportunities, and if you can continue to rebound at the level that you have been doing with Trey Kaufman-Renn on the floor, if Oscar Clough can continue to step up for you, I do think that you're going to find success in this event. Like I said, later in the show, we'll have my official predictions, but I think that Purdue, they are going to find success. There is a level of randomness that comes along with one of these tournaments where it is in a small convention center, not in front of a ton of people. You play two teams on just a random given day after traveling to the Bahamas. There's a lot of things that could happen. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. But I think that Purdue has certainly showed within their identity that this isn't a team that's going to go into games and overlook their opponent. Maybe earlier in the season they did that, but certainly against Akron, which Akron, that's one of the top teams in the nation in terms of being a mid-major, not top of any team, but top mid-major team in the nation. That's kind of who they are. And I feel like Purdue did a good job not underestimating Akron. I think when you face off against a Memphis or a Wake Forest, if you're able to bring that same mentality in, it's going to be very successful for you as Purdue. I think that's what this Boilermaker team has. And if you look at history, it goes to show that Purdue, they show up for these events. The Boilermakers are traditionally, historically dominating in Feast Week events, and I expect that to continue going into this week. We're certainly going to have to see, will that rebounding travel? Will those defense travel? Because Purdue, their defense hasn't been perfect so far this year. The consistency hasn't been there. I'm not sure there's any doubt in the world that Purdue's offense isn't going to show up in Baha Mar. I think that offense may be hotter in Baha Mar than they've been all year. I think that we're still going to see a different stride for this offense. And I think that against competition like this, the offense just continues to grow. I think that for this Purdue team, when you play tougher teams, they will continue to play better because they strive for that competition. In Baha Mar, you've got four really good teams that are going to be competing, including Purdue. You get an opportunity to face off against two of them. So it's going to be a great opportunity. We're going to talk about Texas Tech, Memphis, and Wake Forest. What those teams bring in. Do any of those teams have an opportunity to maybe upset Purdue? We'll take a look at them here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when you use your first $5 bet and it wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We were able to talk about Purdue's history in these Thanksgiving feast week events, and how they've won 4 in a row, looking to get their 5th in their first trip to Baha Mar. But who are the teams in the field? Well, Memphis, a team that actually just concluded playing a game while filming this, and it was a pretty bad loss. So we'll talk about them first. They just lost to UNLV. Texas Tech is a team that has lost this year, but still 15th in the country. And then Wake Forest, of course, Purdue, former player Myles Colvin out there hoping for a lot of success, but not against the Boilermakers. Let's start out with Memphis, because like I said, that game just concluded and they lose to UNLV. This Memphis team was a team that I thought would be kind of underrated this year in terms of they win against San Francisco. They lose to Ole Miss, but just by a little, and Ole Miss isn't terrible this year. But losing to UNLV this early in the season, that's kind of unacceptable. And really, Memphis, a team that was supposed to have a lot of guards this year, that was kind of where their strength was going to be, was having plenty of guards that were going to be able to perform for you and find success. And they have a senior guard in terms of Sincere Parker, who he's their leading scorer this year with 11.3 points per game. He does shoot it pretty efficiently, about 50%, but at 11.7 points per game, it kind of just goes to show that Memphis, they don't have a ton of depth. They certainly don't have the depth that you were expecting them to have going into this season, that I was expecting them to have going into this season. I want to go over the stats for what they played against UNLV. I feel like that'll give a good representation of the Memphis team. This is the last game that they'll play before facing off against Purdue, what they looked like. Ashton Hardaway, who, I mean, if you know the last name, son of Penny Hardaway, I don't think he's that special, and I'm not trying to take a shot at him, but a lot of time with these coaches' kids, they truly just aren't that good. There are some outliers with Tucker DeFreeze at Indiana. I think that he's pretty special. But Ashton Hardaway, he hasn't really impressed me this year. 7 points. Like I said, Curtis Givens, he's another guy where he's a sophomore guard. He's out of Memphis. He's their second leading scorer at 10.7. You're going to see a lot of Curtis Givens. Julius Thedford had 16 points. He's another guard. Memphis is a very guard-heavy team where that's where they're going to want to beat you. In Purdue, they have a lot of depth in their backcourt, kind of similar to Memphis, but I just think that Purdue's depth is a lot stronger than what Memphis brings in, because Memphis, they do have the guards, but even with that, they don't shoot the 3-ball particularly well. I don't really think that they shoot the 3-ball well at all. Only about 30% on the season, Memphis shoots the 3-ball, and we saw that against Alabama too. But with Alabama, what they did was they shot the ball at such a high volume that it really didn't matter. But Memphis only shooting the ball at 32%, and they honestly don't take that shot a whole ton. So a bit of a one-dimensional approach to Memphis's offense so far this year. And I'm not trying to get too bad onto Memphis. I'm not trying to say they're a terrible team, but 1-2, 3 games into the season for a team that I thought would be kind of underrated, it's just underwhelming. And I think that Purdue will have a very good opportunity to beat Memphis. I think that line will open up as Purdue being favored by double digits, to be honest, in this game, because Memphis has really underperformed so far this year. And that's the round 1 opponent. If you beat them, it takes you on to a variety of options. So you either get Wake Forest or you get Texas Tech. And Wake Forest is the team that I want to go over quickly. I don't think that Wake Forest will beat Texas Tech. We'll hit on that during the predictions, but I just think that Texas Tech is so good of a team. But Wake Forest, they're good too. They took Michigan to an 85-84 game where they almost beat that Michigan team. And I think that Wake Forest will be an underdog. I think they'll absolutely be a tournament team this year. And we'll talk about Myles Colvin. Everybody knows him. He was at Purdue. This year, he's averaging 9.5 points. So, I mean, he's not the leader of this team, but still, it's great that he's found himself a position where he can really thrive and be a starter on a team, find a level of success, and he has found a good level of success. And a lot of that comes from the fact that he's in a backcourt alongside Juke Harris. And Juke Harris is one of those guys that you're going to want to look out for if Purdue does happen to face off against Wake Forest, because Juke is averaging 22 points on the season. And yes, it's still early, but not only that, Juke also crashes the boards at a really high level. It's been really impressive to see. Wake Forest, they don't really have a center that you can look at and say, this guy's going to rebound the ball at a crazy high level. That's just not what they have. Their guards are going to do a good job of rebounding the ball. Juke Harris, he's a bit of an oversized guard. So he's 6'7", 200 pounds. Like I said, this guy has been the leader for Wake Forest so far this year. And he's been the reason why they found the level of success they found. He's the reason why they were in such a close game against Michigan. He had 19 points in that game, shot 6 for 14. I think that Wake Forest, they have the opportunity to really go on a run this year. Yes, at Baha Mar, they have the opportunity against Texas Tech on Thursday, but even just throughout the course of this season with Myles Colvin, who I am a little bit biased because he came from Purdue. But Juke Harris, just that backcourt, it's really good. And those two teams, Memphis, Wake Forest, I think out of the two, even Texas Tech, you can throw Texas Tech in that conversation, which I'm about to hit on. But out of the three teams that Purdue has the opportunity to play, I think that Wake Forest really does have the best backcourt behind Purdue. And I may be a little bit biased, but with that oversized guard and Juke Harris, they're just so good, very talented. But Texas Tech is another team that is extremely talented. And the reason they're extremely talented is because they have one of the best players in the nation. We're going to see three of the best players in the nation on display if this is the matchup for the championship game, because JT Toppin comes into Baha Mar averaging a double-double, but not just any double-double. He's averaging 24 points on this season. He's averaging 12 rebounds, 24 and 12 for JT Toppin is almost insane. It is insane, quite frankly, but it's not insane at the same time because this is an All-American. We knew going into this year because of what he did in March last year, carrying the Red Raiders, that he was going to be a guy that we're going to have problems. And yes, Texas Tech versus Purdue wasn't necessarily on the schedule because it's not guaranteed that this matchup is going to happen. But preseason, just speculating at the opportunity to see Trey Kaufman-Renn and JT Toppin duel off. It's going to be a great opportunity for two really good teams to have that competition. And Texas Tech, they have lost a game early. They lost that one to Illinois, and that was a big statement win for Illinois. But I think that was just a fluke, honestly, for Texas Tech. I think that Texas Tech is better than Illinois. I'm really high on Texas Tech this year, and that's why I say I'm also high on Wake Forest. I think that they're a team that's very underrated, but it's going to be a tough matchup because they have a guy in JT Toppin who's one of, if not the best bigs in the nation. I think that TKR is certainly in that conversation, but JT Toppin, hard to deny the capabilities that guy has. But not only do they have him, they also have a sophomore that has taken in a crazy leap that's really broken out so far into this season, and he is Christian Anderson. Christian, he has 19.5 points this year, so almost averaging 20. If you want to round up, that's 20 points. But that's not where he beats you, because Christian Anderson so far this year is averaging 9 assists a game. And it just kind of shows you what that matchup could look like. Braden Smith, who is one of, if not the best, I think it's hard to argue that he's not the best playmaker in the country right now. But Anderson, he's kind of cementing himself as the future of college basketball, being a playmaker going into the future. And his ability to dump it down low to JT Toppin, who's averaging 24 points a game, That certainly has a lot to do with Texas Tech's success. That has a lot to do with Anderson's success as a playmaker, being able to develop those assists. But you could say the same for Purdue, where they have Braden Smith, who is on trajectory to break the all-time assist record. And he has the opportunity to pass it down low to TKR, who is one of the best scorers as a big man in the nation. These two teams are a lot more similar than they seem. Both very experienced, both very physical, and both very good rebounding teams. I think that Texas Tech Purdue is the matchup to watch out for. I think that's the best matchup possible in this tournament, and I really hope that it happens. Here in this next segment, where I give my predictions. Who wins? Will Purdue win their 5th consecutive Feast Week event? We'll talk about it here next on Locked On Boilermakers. I want to go ahead and say thank you once again if you guys have made it this far. Thank you for watching Locked On Boilermakers, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We absolutely couldn't do it without y'all's support, without you guys tuning in all the time. Thank you so much. And thank you for sticking around, because I want to give my predictions for Baha Mar for this tournament that is certainly going to be exciting. The start of Feast Week. 4 teams, and there's going to be a couple big matchups on Thursday. And Purdue versus Memphis, we'll talk about that one first. I'll give my prediction. No, I want to give my prediction for Texas Tech and Wake Forest first. I think that game, as much as I want to see Purdue win, as much as I'm excited to see Purdue win, but from a pure basketball standpoint, that may be the most fun matchup of the week. And there are some fun ones. You got the Champions Classic in New York starting up. That one's going to be fun with Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas, all those. But I think that Wake Forest and Texas Tech, that's going to be a matchup that's can't miss. And we talked about it in our last segment, but those Wake Forest guards, they're going to be tough this year. They're going to be tough for any team really in the ACC. And I think that Wake Forest is a team that could really kind of bounce out and say, hey, we deserve to be ranked. If they beat Texas Tech, that's a resume building win that you can hold up in March and say, we beat number 15 in the nation. Yes, it was in Baha Mar, but still, that's a quad 1 win on a neutral floor. Wake Forest certainly has the opportunity to do that. And if they were to go in and win this game, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, because I think that this team is really that good. I think they're really underrated. However, I think that Texas Tech is properly rated. And at number 15, you're going to have a heck of a performance to beat them. And Texas Tech, they're 15. I think they could even be higher rated, because they do lose to Illinois. That was a tough one, but just based off pure talent, what this Texas Tech team brings in, the ability to have a key playmaker and then have one of the best players in the nation down low, it makes you extremely hard to beat. And we've seen it with Purdue all year long so far. We've seen it through 4 games, and we've seen it for Texas Tech. When you have a guy in JT Toppin where he can get you a basket whenever you need it, it's going to give you a lot of success. We saw that with TKR coming back. Those guys down low that they can buy you a bucket at a very efficient rate whenever you need it. Those teams are hard to beat, and it's more efficient. It's easier to obtain. It's easier to maintain, rather, for a full game, being able to score down low at a consistent level than against a team that maybe has to rely on the 3 ball. I'm not saying that Wake Forest is going to do that, but with their guards having to generate looks with jump shots in the mid-range from 3-point range, I don't think that they'll be able to do that as consistent as Texas Tech will be able to get the ball down low to JT Toppin and let him cook, because that's what JT Toppin does. That's why he's averaging a 24-point double-double on the year. And I expect him to do that against Wake Forest. And I do ultimately expect Texas Tech to win that game against Wake Forest and set up a championship game on Friday. Back to the other side, Purdue versus Memphis. Purdue, they come into this matchup in the Bahamas really hot with 2 huge wins that have kind of cemented where this team is and where they are at this point in the year. That this team, they may be a little bit more ready than other people thought. They go back up to number 1 in the AP poll, definitely deserving. And you face off against a Memphis team that is struggling. We talked about them losing to UNLV. That's a tough loss for the Tigers. They will certainly be motivated against the number 1 team in the nation. And I'm not saying that anything can't happen, because we know this is college basketball. It's the most unpredictable sport, and that's what makes it so great So I'm not saying that Memphis can't come in to this game and beat Purdue in the first game. But what I am saying is that Memphis, they haven't found a guy that's going to be their number one scorer. They haven't found a number one option. And right now, I don't know if Penny Hardaway's team has a whole lot of answers for what they're going to do. Memphis, they're struggling right now with a 1-2 start to the year. I think that the Tigers have a long way to go. I think they have a lot to do before they are able to compete with Purdue. I think that Purdue gets a double-digit win. Like I said, if Memphis comes in and they surprise Purdue, like I said, it's Baha Mar. We got this small ballroom. Crazier things have happened, certainly. And I'm not discrediting Memphis, but they are struggling. This is a team that they've got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of improvements that they need to make in order to get on the trajectory that that team wants to get on. And if Purdue is able to win on Thursday, they will go to the Baha Mar Championship, and that's going to set up a marquee matchup. Purdue and Texas Tech, two teams that are more similar than a lot of people expect. You got JT Toppin, Trey Kaufman-Renn. You got Braden Smith. That's going to be a matchup that's much see. Number one versus a top 15 team in the nation if they make it that far. I really don't see a way where this game isn't one of the most exciting games in the country all season long. I think that these are two of the more exciting teams in the nation. If Wake Forest and Purdue is the matchup, I'll be excited. I'll be excited to see our guy Colvin play off against us once more. But I think I'd be more excited about a Texas Tech matchup than anything this year, quite frankly. And I think that if this matchup does happen at the end of this week, that it would be Purdue's toughest non-conference game left on the schedule. I think that this would be Purdue's real, their number one opportunity at getting knocked off, at not having an undefeated record in non-conference. Iowa State certainly has an opportunity to do it at Mackey, but in terms of playing Auburn and Indianapolis, playing Marquette at home, none of those games really say Purdue's going to lose this one, but playing Texas Tech and Baha Mar in a hotel where anything can happen, that's one where I look and I say, well, if Purdue, they're not playing hot, if on back-to-back games they don't bring that same level of intensity, they could very easily get beat. As of right now, with the way that Purdue is playing, I'm not confident saying that Purdue could get beat. However, I do think that this will be a 4-point game. I think this will be a 2-point game, a 1 to 2 possession game that really goes down to the wire. We saw that last year with Ole Miss, where that game was kind of determined on a game winner. But when you have two teams that can go back and forth like they can, and back to the very start of the episode where Braden Smith and his pace got brought up, I think that's going to be big for determining how many opportunities you have the ball, how many possessions you have. Against a Texas Tech team that can go back and forth with you, that's going to be gigantic if they're able to do that. But just having JT Toppin, you have got to limit that guy. And it's certainly difficult. It's easier said than done. But if he can have a day where you're 18-8, you can limit his rebounding output. I think that that's really going to be beneficial for Purdue. And Texas Tech, they haven't faced off against a rebounding team like Purdue this year. With Trey Kaufman-Renn, with Oscar Clough, those guys are going to make it difficult for JT Toppin, more difficult than he's seen all year long. So if Texas Tech and Purdue do face off, although I think that Texas Tech is one of the best teams in the nation, I think that Purdue is the best team in the nation, and they're certainly going to be hard to beat. With that, I think that Purdue wins a very close game against Texas Tech. Maybe it's one possession, maybe it's two possessions, but a win is a win, and I have the Boilermakers winning their 5th consecutive Feast Week event. It's going to be a fun one in the Bahamas. I'm excited for Purdue's first trip to Baha Mar, and I'm appreciative that you guys made Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. We're going to be talking Baha Mar, this event all week long. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, consider checking out Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman. He breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thank you guys. If you guys are just now seeing us, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out a ton as we want to continue to grow, bring you daily content every single day. Thank you guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.